Hi everybody, I'm Tom Jackson from the University of Leeds. Today I'd like to talk to you about some virtual projects which were created as part of the funded research Virtual Holocaust Memoryscapes. So working in collaboration with Iris Groschek and using a range of photographic, sound recording and interactive technologies, I produced multisensory virtual representations of a number of locations at the Neuengamme Memorial site. These projects are accessible through standard web browser technology and via virtual reality headsets. The intentions of these projects were to provide a form of virtual access to otherwise inaccessible parts of the site. We intentionally chose locations within the site which are educationally rich, but are completely unsafe for visitors to walk around. However, it was apparently absolutely fine to send me off into them. The other intention was to bring archival materials into the virtual experience of the site. Just as tour guides draw upon particular images and objects in order to engage visitors, the virtual projects draw these materials in as gateways to the narratives of the Holocaust. And finally, to open up an experience of the site, however limited it might be compared to the experience of actually being there, to a much wider audience by making the projects freely accessible from anywhere in the world. The reception of these projects has been very encouraging. We built feedback mechanisms into the projects themselves, and users have provided us with a range of constructive and thankfully largely positive feedback. In particular, this concept of a multi-sensory engagement with the site through digital technologies seems to have engaged quite a number of visitors. Some completely unexpected impact resulted from the research too. The projects that I produced during Virtual Holocaust Memoryscapes started to be adopted by other memorial sites and museums. They were redeveloped and augmented with survivor testimony for an exhibition at Westerbork and have been permanently installed as part of the visitor offering at Museum 44. And this is where I really think the greatest potential of this work lies. Using virtual technologies as a method of interconnecting educationally related but geographically distant sites, allowing visitors to gain a much deeper understanding than a visit to a single site might permit. However, the ways in which these interconnections are made and the user experience of encountering them needs to be very thoughtfully designed. And Tony Rowland from Manchester Metropolitan University and I are currently seeking funding to undertake this next stage of the research in collaboration with some leading technology partners. So hopefully that has offered you some insights into what these projects are, what they are intended to accomplish, and how they have been utilised. However, what I'd actually like to spend a significant proportion of this talk addressing is the important issue of ethics. This research has revealed some very important ethical questions which need to be carefully considered during the following stages of the research, and which I hope will be of relevance to everyone here who works with virtual technologies in relation to the Holocaust. So I think it's important for you all to appreciate that I'm a practice-led researcher. I make contributions to knowledge through the design and development of practical projects. And in being the originator of these virtual experiences that I'm talking about today, I would argue that I was uniquely situated to generate insights into the ethics of their creation. As I used cameras and audio recording equipment to create the virtual projects, I quickly came to understand the extent to which the resulting experience was going to be reflective of my own agency. As I moved around the spaces, making compositional, technological, and selective decisions, generating the required audiovisual materials, I was consciously or otherwise introducing intentions which would ultimately be indexed in the resulting experience for all users. These issues of agency and intentionality are troubling because many users will likely consider such projects to be neutral representations of a particular space. The ability to freely navigate around and interact with a virtual environment has the potential to mask the fact that the virtual space itself has in fact been constructed from materials which represent those compositional, technological and selective decisions of the originator. The virtual experience, therefore, is far from neutral, whether or not the user is aware of that. These ethical considerations might be particularly troubling when sound recordings are used as part of a virtual experience. I would argue that many users appreciate how visual materials are reflective of the intentions of the originator, but it's actually far less common for users to possess a similar awareness of these issues when it comes to sound. For instance, most people, I'm sure, will appreciate that a photograph has been taken by a photographer stood behind the camera, and that the resulting image reflects that photographer's intentions regarding framing, focal length, exposure, and such things. But with audio, the presence and intentionality of the sound recordist are commonly overlooked. However, that person is still there, making the same kind of creative and technological decisions, all of which will be embodied in the resulting experience. So a key question for us all to ask then might be, whose subjective and embodied perspective do virtual experiences represent? This question becomes increasingly entangled when virtual experiences are constructed by drawing upon materials from the archives. As I'm sure everyone in this meeting will appreciate, a lot of the archival materials that we have access to in relation to the Holocaust represent a perpetrator's perspective. And in creating new virtual experiences based upon those materials, we need to be aware of the potential to recreate those perspectives through contemporary digital technologies. So maybe a better question might be, whose subjective and embodied perspective do virtual experiences and the content upon which they are based represent? Although I do appreciate that's a little bit more difficult to say. We also need to understand that no matter how sophisticated contemporary digital technologies might have become, virtual environments in no way recreate the experience of actually visiting a site. Language commonly used in relation to virtual reality, such as "it's just like being there," as appealing as it sounds, is simply not accurate. Issues of reduction, translation, and mediation will always arise. Now, this is probably common sense, but I think it's worth restating here and carefully considering how this issue specifically relates to this discussion today regarding virtual Holocaust memorialisation. During virtual Holocaust memoryscapes, the educational intention of allowing visitors to complicate the narratives of the Holocaust was a regularly recurring theme. We therefore need to acknowledge a potential conflict between this intention and the inevitably reductive experience offered by virtual environments. The ways in which processes of reduction, translation, and mediation might impact upon visitor understanding need to be carefully considered, and we need to use the capabilities of digital technologies in order to deepen visitor understandings in other complementary ways. It also became clear during virtual Holocaust memoryscapes that visitors to memorial sites have very different priorities. And another important ethical question, therefore, is how do we create virtual experiences which are able to accommodate the different and potentially incompatible priorities of a wide range of users? As we design and develop digital tools and technologies for engaging with and understanding memorial sites, whose needs should those tools and technologies aim to facilitate. So in conclusion, the potential clearly exists for virtual experiences to make meaningful contributions to how visitors are able to engage with and understand Holocaust memorial sites and museums. However, as we design and develop these projects, we must avoid the temptation to be too technologically optimistic and keep important ethical questions, such as those that I've addressed here, at the forefront of our minds. That's 10 minutes and 26 seconds. Apologies for horribly overrunning there. Thank you.